In our hollow, Halloween isn't for costumes or candy. It's the night the mountain borrows your name. I didn't come to Black Briar Run to believe that. I came because I'm a folklorist with a pack full of microphones and a head full of graduate theses. Also because my grandmother, Alma Ridge, who raised me on biscuits and ballads, left me her first cassette recorder in a shoebox with a note, "For Mara, if you hear me after sundown, don't answer." I thought it was one of her jokes, but the tape inside was labeled in my grandmother's neat block letters, OCT 31, 1978, "Don't play at night." I drove into the hollow the last week of October. The two-lane curled around black spruce and laurel like a knotted ribbon. Fog pooled in the dips and hollows, and the ridgelines looked like sleeping beasts under quilts of color. The road narrowed to gravel, then to packed dirt rutted with the season's last rains. No cell service, no other cars. The only sound was the hiss of my tires and, once, something knocking deep inside the hills, like a railroad hammer tapping the bones of the mountain. Black Briar Run wasn't on most maps, just a scatter of cabins stitched along a creek that slid over shale like a sharp blue ribbon. Porches sagged, tin roofs caught the gray light, and yet every house was dressed like it was Sunday. Clean swept steps, jars of clear creek water set by the door, red thread tied over lintels in a bow, and a little paper square tacked above each handle with a charcoal X. I recorded everything. October 29th, I whispered into the mic. Black Briar Run, population maybe 40 if you count the dogs. All homes display apotropaic markings, red cotton thread, iron nail heads and door frames, water jars. Don't point that thing at folks. You're Alma's girl, I'm Bertie Kincaid. Your grandma said you'd come one day with wires in your ears. Come on, the deacon's waiting, said Bertie Kincaid. Deacon Eli wasn't a preacher so much as an elected spine. He stood on the church steps, white clapboard, bell wrapped in burlap, and looked me over like he was counting my bones. Alma raised you, right? He asked. She raised me loud, I said. You'll want to be quiet by Halloween. We call it binding night, said Deacon Eli. They took me through the rules at Bertie's kitchen table, where the kerosene lamp made everyone's eyes look double dark. Don't answer when called after sundown. Don't step off the red thread line. Keep iron on you, nail, knife, key, doesn't matter. Keep a jar of water by the door, refreshed from the creek at midday. If the water shivers on its own, stay inside. If the bell sounds without a hand on the rope, lie flat and keep your mouth shut. What happens if you break the rules? I asked. We dig, or what's left of us digs. Bertie said Deacon Eli took the long view. Everything began with a mistake, he said. Halloween of 1910, mine 26 sealed with a cave-in, 21 men under there in a pocket of air banging on the timbers for help. Their families heard and ran to pull them out, but the noises wandered up the hills like the mountain had swallowed them and was moving them around. Then the voices started. Mama, over here. Molly, is that you? We'd chase a cry to one ridge and it'd call us from the next. By midnight, there were more voices than there were names in this valley. The next day, we found 2 bodies and 100 footprints that went in circles. They never found the rest? I asked. Some things go into the mountain different than they come out, so we bind the hollow each year. To keep the borrowed voices hungry but outside, said Bertie Kincaid. The borrowed voices. The words felt like ice on my teeth. That night, with the church bell gagged and the valley's windows lit like fireflies, I sat on Bertie's porch and played my grandmother's tape. It crackled, the way old cassettes do, and then her voice filled the air. Younger, higher, but still my grandmother. It's just past sundown. Roy thinks I'm foolish to talk, but I'll lay it down anyway for the record. We got Deacon's red line strung from house to house. Wind's up. If my voice starts talking from the creek, I hope hell freezes. The tape clacked. A high hiss. I pressed my headphones to my ears. Alma. No. Oh, it hurts. Don't you hear us? I hear you, but I ain't answering. Go on now. You're not mine. The tape clicked off all on its own. I sat there with the lamp guttering, listening to the creek. Somewhere, an owl called, and the sound hung on the air too long, as if the mountain were trying it on for size. On the morning of the 31st, the whole hollow went to work. Men hammered iron nails into thresholds until the wood splintered. Children braided red thread and stretched it from porch post to porch post, making a web as tight as a spider's. Women drew salt lines at the ends of driveways and set jars of creek water in the centers like punctuation marks. No singing, no whistling, no laughter above a murmur. Even the dogs seemed to tuck their barks away. Deacon Eli gave me a length of thread and an iron railroad spike polished bright. "Tie yourself to us," he said. He looped the thread through my belt and tied me waist to waist to Birdie. "You'll see us through this, Alma's girl, and we'll see you through it." I wanted to ask questions. So many my throat itched, but the day thinned like paper under a match. By dusk, the fog had rolled in, and the creek sound had changed from water over rock to breath through teeth. Every jar of water on every porch trembled. It was like the whole hollow was a drum waiting for the first strike. The first voice came from the ridge above the church, at the very moment the sun slid behind the mountain. A boy's voice, high and wet with crying. "Mama! Mama, I'm down here!" Birdie's hands tightened on the thread at my waist. Somewhere, a woman made a sound like a pot breaking and clapped both hands over her mouth. A second voice followed, younger still. "Granny Birdie, where's my red ribbon? It fell in the creek." Birdie's eyes shone. "Mara," she whispered. But not to me, more to herself. "That's loose. She's dead 30 years. She bent forward as if her body were made of iron, and the voice was a magnet. The thread at my waist went taut. I wrapped it around my hand until it bit. We stood like that, bent toward our dead, while voices multiplied in the fog. Some called names, some begged, some just breathed, hoping we'd fill the silence with answers. No one spoke. Every porch light burned fierce, and then it said my name. Mara. Not a yell, just a conversational greeting, like you'd hear from a friend who'd found you in the canned goods aisle. "Mara, you've come back. Lord, I've missed you." My mouth went dry. My grandmother's voice, but older the way I last heard it. Breathless from laughing, rough from years of mountain winters. I squeezed my eyes shut and counted nails. 1 at the door, 2 at the beam. "Mara, I've been waiting. You left me here. Don't answer." The bell pealed. It came out of the church with the violence of a rifle shot. 1, 2, 3 times. The sound made the fog jump. Someone screamed, a real voice this time, high and human. Deacon Eli's grandson, Jeb, bolted from his mother's arms, inches of loose red thread trailing behind him, and ran over the salt line like it wasn't there. "My daddy! Daddy's in the trees! I hear him!" His mother went after him. In an instant, the web broke, lines snapping, people shouting without words, and the hollow surged toward the dark. I didn't think. I moved with them. "Birdie!" I shouted, stupidly, breaking the first rule, and the mountain took my voice into its mouth. 10 feet away, it threw it back at me from another direction. "Birdie!" My own voice, wrong in the jaw. The borrowed version was a step ahead, calling where I would call, luring us sideways. "Stay on the thread." And for that, he got punished. His shout returned as a dozen cracked versions, each one stalking him from a different stand of laurel. Still, he plunged after the boy. I tied the thread to a fence post, looped more around my waist, and followed, dragging the line behind me like a vein. The laurel hell swallowed us. Thickets of rhododendron and laurel so thick you had to crawl, the ground slick with rotting leaves and the smell of earth that had never seen light. The fog didn't thin. It thickened, weaving itself between the leaves like something alive. I could hear Jeb crying ahead, then behind, then ahead again. My grandmother's voice walked at my side, patient as a hound. "You always were stubborn, Mara. Come on home." We broke out onto a ledge above a black mouth in the hillside. Mine 26, chained and nailed shut, but breathing. A cold draft came out of that hole that smelled of old coins and wet stone. The air above it was flecked with a faint blue glow. Foxfire, I thought distantly. Fungus feeding on rot. It pulsed like a heartbeat. Jeb's cries wound up from inside. "Hold the line." He handed me the end of the red thread and jammed the railroad spike into the soil. If we go in tied. He knotted the thread to his belt and to mine and to Bertie's, looped it around a stump, and threw the coil to Jeb's mother. If the water in your jar on the porch goes still, you haul us back. How will we know? You'll know. We found the side entrance where rockfall didn't quite seal the mine. We went in sideways, sucking our bellies in, the cold cutting through clothes and skin to the part of you that remembers caves from 1,000,000 years ago. The tunnel opened into a room where rails were half sunk in mud and the roof dripped like a slow clock. The voices got clever in there. They didn't just call names, they learned our words and played them at us like a song. "Hold the line," the mine whispered in Deacon Eli's voice. "Don't answer," it crooned in Bertie's. When it tried mine, it got hung up on the vowels, like gums learning to hold new teeth. "Mara, Mara!" Jeb sobbed somewhere to our left. We edged along the wall, iron spikes in our fists, lantern throwing shadows that moved wrong, lagging half a beat behind our bodies, like they were listening before obeying. A cart stood frozen on the track, its wheels half swallowed by time. 19 names were carved into the wood. I did not count the missing 2. "He said my name right," he sobbed. "He said it the way Daddy does." We're going home, and the mountain fought like a hooked thing. The voices rose, furious now that we'd plucked their bait. They called every name I'd ever been given. Myrnie, the nickname Grandma had for me when I was small. Mara Jean, the full name she used when I'd broken a dish. Sweetheart, honey, girl, each one thrown from a different seam of rock. The tunnel breathed in and out. Water dripped faster. A stone rolled under my boot, and suddenly my foot plunged into a black pool up to the knee. Something cold closed around my ankle. Salt, as calm as setting a table, and tipped a pinch into the water. The grip let go. We staggered forward, pulled by the thread that hummed with something like heat. The mine objected, not with collapse, but with mimicry. It made my voice tell Bertie to stop. It made Deacon Eli's voice say to cut the thread and go faster. It made Jeb's mother wail from deeper in the tunnel when she was 30 feet behind us, feet planted, hauling the line like an anchor woman, hauling a storm. That was the worst of it. Not the cold or the wet, or the fear of the earth above dropping to meet our skulls, but the way the mountain tried to learn us, tried to get our mouths right, tried to make us believe we were already answering. We burst out into the night, like we had been birthed by rock. Jeb's mother fell to her knees, and the line went slack. The jars of water on every porch stilled at once. Later, Bertie told me she could feel it like a change in barometric pressure. The voices didn't stop. They stood at the edge of the laurel and breathed our air, using our names, practicing. But they could not cross the salt. Back in the hollow, the bell hung silent under its burlap. Fires burned low. People counted. Heads, breath, births, losses. No one asked if we'd learned anything. Learning is what gets you eaten. I slept on Bertie's floor like a sack of wet clothes. At some hour too late to be night and too early to be morning, I woke to the tape recorder whirring by itself, but I'd left it turned off. The little red light was an eye. Myrnie, if you ever hear me at a time like this, close your mouth. There's not enough air in the world for what the mountain wants. There was a second voice faint beneath hers, so quiet I didn't know it was there, until the volume swelled and my own name rolled out of the machine in my own voice, wrong in the jaw. "Mara!" It sounded pleased. "You answered." I must have turned the machine off or ripped the batteries out. I don't remember. I remember Bertie kneeling by me, her hands on my shoulders, her breath the only warm thing in the room. "You're not the first to be called by your own self," she said, "but you don't have to be the first to answer." We left the next afternoon. People were exhausted and kind the way survivors are. They pressed food into our hands we didn't want and refused to take back the empty Tupperware. Deacon Eli shook my hand like he was counting to make sure it had 5 fingers. "Tell what you saw if you must," he said, "but don't tell it at night." I drove out with the windows cracked, listening to the creek drag the hollow behind us. At the ridge, I stopped at the overlook and looked back. Fog had already bandaged the place. The mountain looked like a sleeping thing with no interest in our little names. Back in the city, with the hum of traffic like surf and the convenience of lights at the press of a switch, I edited the audio. Most of what I had was useless. The borrowed voices hissed on the tape like wind. When I boosted the frequencies and curled the waveforms out like scrolls, tiny things emerged. My grandmother saying, "Don't," over and over, like a heartbeat. Jeb crying once in the mine and then not again. The scrape of iron on rock. Birdie's whisper, "Hold the line." I did not publish it. I wrote a private account and sealed it with red thread, the way I'd been taught to seal doors. On Halloween, I keep a jar of water on my apartment floor and iron in my pocket, and I do not say my name out loud. It feels foolish. It also feels like insurance. 2 weeks after I left the Hollow, at 3:12 a.m., my phone lit up with a voicemail that had no missed call attached. I lay awake for a long time with the screen face down like a full moon under a pillow. Finally, I hit play. Static. The soft, wet sound of a cave breathing. Then my grandmother's voice, the one from my childhood, bright as kindling. "Myrnie? Sugar? You still up?" I closed my eyes. I did not answer. The message cut. My phone vibrated again in my hand, another voicemail waiting, and then another. They stacked like stones, each one heavier than the last. I turned the phone off and tucked it in the freezer like I could cryopreserve my common sense. In the morning, the water in the jar by my door had a skin of tiny bubbles along the rim. I carried it to the sink and poured it away. The drain sounded like a tunnel exhaling. Some places are meant to be left alone. Some names are yours until the mountain learns them. And once it does, it will call you every Halloween, patient as frost, trying its vowels on in the dark, waiting for the night you forget the rules and answer back.